They say the hill pulls things upward, as though the mountain itself swallows gravity.
I have found the reason. Why cars are pulled up automatically.
Tell us.
Tell us!
High in the Himalayan mountains, where the air is thin and the silence is so deep that even the sound of a turning wheel seems to echo like thunder, there lies a road unlike any other. Travelers who have taken this road speak of a moment when the ordinary laws of the world fall apart. Imagine a car rolling uphill, not downhill, with no engine running and no one pushing forward. A road where the rules of gravity seem to twist and change. A place where every step, every glance, makes one wonder if the world has been hiding secrets far older than any map. On a quiet day, a lone traveler drove along the road to Leh, the capital of Ladakh. The mountains rose around him like ancient guardians, their peaks touched with snow that had rested there for centuries. He expected nothing unusual, just a long ribbon of road winding through the valleys, stretching under the cold blue sky. But then it happened. The car slowed to a stop. He prepared to push it forward, but before his hand could touch the wheel, the car began to move on its own, slowly, gradually, against the slope, rolling uphill. The man froze. His breath hung in the thin air. His hands trembled as he stepped out of the car. He watched the vehicle climb upward, as if pulled by unseen ropes. There was no noise of the engine, no sound of gears, just the crunch of the tires on gravel. He placed his foot firmly on the ground. He walked beside the car, testing the slope. His feet told him he was on an incline. His eyes confirmed it. Yet the car defied every rule he had trusted since childhood. How could something roll against gravity? The silence was heavy. Only the faint whistle of the wind touched his ears. He walked ahead and stood still, letting the car roll past him. The shadow of the mountain fell across the road, bending the light in strange ways. The traveler's heart pounded. Was it only an illusion? A trick of perspective? Or was there a hidden force inside the mountain, older than time, that pulled at the world in ways no one could explain? He thought of the road itself. Black asphalt cut into the dry land, framed by rocks and sand that had not shifted in centuries. To an ordinary eye, it looked like nothing more than a simple road. But he could feel it now. Something alive in the stillness. Something that changed the laws of nature, as if the mountain refused to follow the same rules as the rest of the earth. Stories of such places are rare, yet they linger in whispers wherever people gather. This man, standing on the road, became part of that whisper. He touched the gravel with his hands, hoping to feel something, anything that could explain. The stones were ordinary. The road was ordinary. Yet what he witnessed was not. His car moved upward without help, as if gravity itself had been betrayed. He tried to steady his thoughts. Was it his mind playing games? Was the road built in such a way that it created an illusion? Could the slope be an eye trick, making downhill look like uphill? But when he closed his eyes and trusted only his steps, he still felt the climb. His muscles strained as he walked beside the car. Every sense told him the road went upward. Yet the car bade a different truth. The mountains around him stood unmoving, but in their stillness they seemed to watch. High ridges cut against the sky. Shadows crept across the valley, and silence pressed down heavier than stone. The traveler felt small, as if the earth itself had secrets it would never share. A simple road had become a riddle of nature, or perhaps not nature at all. Perhaps something beyond nature. He thought of the countless travelers before him. How many had stopped here? How many had watched their cars move uphill in the same eerie silence? Some must have laughed, treating it as a trick to amuse children. Others must have left unsettled, haunted by the thought that the world was not as they believed. The man realized he was now among them, a witness to something unexplained, unforgettable, and impossible to turn away from. As the car rolled higher, the traveler felt a strange sensation, as though he too was being pulled. His body leaned forward, his steps faster than he intended. The slope demanded effort, yet his weight felt lighter, almost as if unseen hands carried him upward along with the car. He turned back once, looking down the valley. The road stretched away like a ribbon leading into nothingness. He had left a familiar world behind. Now he stood on a path where the rules were different. The thin mountain wind brushed against his face. It carried no answers, only questions. Was this a trick of the eyes? A place where the land and sky had conspired to deceive the senses? Or was there something buried deep within the mountain? Something that pushed and pulled at the earth like a sleeping giant? Was this hill a doorway to forces mankind had never measured? The traveler did not know. No one knew. That was the terror and the wonder of it. He stepped closer to the car. It kept moving without sound, each wheel turning as if guided by something hidden. He laid his hand on the roof of the vehicle, feeling the vibration of motion. The cold metal felt strangely alive. He whispered no words, for words could not explain. He only followed, step by step, into the unknown. Above him, the sky grew darker with passing clouds. Shadows shifted on the slopes, making the road seem like a living thing. The silence deepened. His breath grew heavy. The mountain loomed over him, vast and unbroken. It was not only stone and earth anymore. It was a puzzle, a question without an answer, a challenge to everything he thought he knew. The car slowed, then stopped, as if the unseen force had released it. The traveler stood still. The silence around him felt different now. He had seen something he could never forget. He had stepped into a place where the ordinary world no longer ruled. A road where gravity bent, where science faltered and where mystery reigned. And so the question remains, was it the eyes playing tricks? Was it the mind, fooled by shadows and slopes? Or was there truly something hidden in the heart of the mountain, pulling upward with a power beyond reason? No one could say for certain. All that could be known was this. On that lonely stretch of Himalayan road, the earth itself seemed to breathe differently, and those who passed by carried a memory with them forever. At the foot of the great Himalayas, not far from the strange road where cars roll upward, there lies a small village. Its houses are built of stone and wood, standing firm against the cold winds that sweep through the valley. Smoke curls from chimneys in the evening, and the sound of prayer bells drifts through the air at dawn. To an outsider, it feels peaceful, untouched by the noise of the outside world. But among the people who live there, whispers carry stories that are far from peaceful. Whispers about the hill where the rules of the earth seem to break. The villagers do not speak of it openly. They lower their voices when strangers ask questions. They look over their shoulders, as if the mountains themselves are listening. They say the hill pulls things upward, as though the earth swallows gravity and spits it out in defiance. Some claim it is blessed ground, a place chosen by divine hands. Others insist it is cursed, a place where no one should linger too long. In their silence lies fear, and in their whispers lies memory. Old men with weathered faces gather in the evenings, sitting around small fires as the flames crackle in the cold night. Children listen from the corners, wide-eyed and silent. The old men tell travelers who came long ago, strangers who followed the road and vanished without a trace. Some were merchants carrying goods. Others were soldiers on their way to far-off posts. They never returned. But the villagers speak of strange lights seen on the slopes at night, of shadows moving where no men should be, of voices calling in the wind that belong to no living soul. There are those in the village who believe the hill is a gift. They say that when the car rolls upward, it is the mountain's way of guiding the lost, showing the worthy that there is always a path forward. They recall stories of weary travelers who stopped there, too tired to go on, only to find themselves carried by unseen forces to safer ground. Some speak of shepherds who, in times of storm, were led back to their homes when they lost their way in the fog. For these villagers, the hill is sacred, and to question it is to question the will of the heavens. But not all believe in such kindness. Others whisper of a darker truth, one that the land itself remembers. They tell of spirits that wander near the road, restless souls who never reach their destinations. According to these tales, the pull of the hill is not a blessing but a trap, a force that lures travelers closer and closer until it claims them. Some say the ground beneath the road is hollow, and that within the hollow lies a power that was buried long ago, sealed away so it would not consume the world. The villagers tell these stories with unease, their eyes shifting toward the mountains as they speak. Mothers hush their children when the topic arises. The younger ones laugh nervously. Yet they too avoid walking near the road alone. At night, when the wind grows fierce and the valley fills with shadows, many lock their doors and whisper prayers. Because whether the hill is a miracle or a curse, no one dares deny its power. An elder once spoke of a story from his grandfather. He said that in the days when roads were only dusty paths, a caravan passed through the valley. The leader of the caravan was proud and strong, but he mocked the warnings of the villagers. He told them the stories were lies, that no hill could defy gravity. When his caravan reached the slope, the carts began to move upward on their own. The animals panicked, the wheels creaked, and the men cried out in fear. The leader laughed at first, but when night fell, the caravan did not arrive at the next village. No trace was found, only scattered belongings near the road. The villagers said the mountain had taken them, swallowed by the force that dwelled beneath the surface. Another tale speaks of a monk who traveled the land in search of wisdom. When he reached the hill, he bowed before it and stayed there for 3 days, neither eating nor drinking. He believed the strange pull of the earth was a sign from the divine, a doorway between the human world and the spirit world. On the 3rd night, the monk vanished. Some claimed he was lifted into the sky by unseen hands. Others believed the earth itself opened and drew him in. To this day, no one knows his fate, but his name lingers in the chants of the monastery nearby. As years passed, more and more travelers came to see the hill for themselves. Some left amused, convinced it was nothing more than a trick of the eyes. Others left unsettled, whispering that they felt the air grow heavier there, that they heard voices in silence, that they could not shake the feeling of being watched. The villagers, however, remained unchanged. They watched the outsiders come and go, never certain that the hill would show its gentler face or its darker one. The whispers grew stronger with each passing generation. Some villagers began to claim that the pull of the hill was connected to the stars above. They noticed how the slope glowed faintly under the moonlight, how shadows bent strangely under starlit skies. A few even claimed to see figures moving along the slope at night, tall and thin, gliding rather than walking. When asked who these figures were, no one could answer. Some believed they were ancestors, guiding the living. Others believed they were something older, something that never belonged to the world of man. Despite the mystery, the villagers continued their lives. They tended their fields, herded their yaks, lit their lamps at night. But the hill was always there, a presence that could not be ignored. It was a kind of presence that lived not in sight, but in the mind, shaping the way people thought, the way they feared, the way they believed. To some, it was holy. To others, it was haunted. To all, it was a truth they could never escape. Even now, when cars roll upward and tourists laugh and wonder, the villagers stay quiet. They do not share everything they know. They keep certain stories to themselves, told only in the dark corners of their homes, where the sound of the wind cannot carry them to the slopes. For they believe that speaking too much of the hill invites its attention, and that to call its name too often is to risk being pulled closer to its secret. There are children who grow up hearing these whispers, and when they are old enough, they too walk the road. Some return with smiles, declaring it only a game of the eyes. Others return pale, refusing to speak of what they saw or felt. One thing is certain: every person who passes a hill carries something back with them, a memory, a question, a doubt. And in that village, under the watchful gaze of the Himalayas, the whispers never die. They move from lips to ears, from one generation to the next. They shape the hearts of those who listen, and they remind all who live there that not everything in this world can be explained. Some things are meant to remain mysterious. Some places are meant to be feared. The Magnetic Hill is one such place. A place where stories are not just told but lived. A place where the whispers of the villagers hold as much weight as the stones of the mountain. Blessed or cursed, no one can say for sure, but the whispers remain, soft and unending, echoing against the silence of the mountains, as though the hill itself listens to every word. The whispers of the villagers did not stay hidden forever. Word spread, carried by travelers and passed from one restless mind to another. By the time the world began to reach deeper into the valleys of the Himalayas, stories of the strange hill had found their way into the ears of men who were not content with whispers. They were men of science, explorers of the unknown, and seekers of truth. Where the villagers saw blessings or curses, these men saw a puzzle, and puzzles demanded answers. They came in groups, carrying boxes of instruments, journals bound in leather, and compasses polished bright, as though their shine could guard against the dark. Their boots crunched over the stones of the valley. Their eyes swept the horizon, sharp and hungry. To them, the hill was not just a road. It was a question that defied the order of the world. The first team of explorers stood at the slope, their breath rising in the cold. They placed their compasses on the ground, one after another. The needles twitched. Some spun in slow circles. Others refused to settle on north. The men frowned, exchanging glances. This was no ordinary disturbance. Their notes filled with words like erratic, unstable, unexplained. The land seemed to bend the instruments to its own will, like a silent hand moving unseen. They unpacked more equipment, metallic devices that ticked and hummed, small machines that buzzed when close to magnetic fields. At first, they recorded nothing unusual, but when the machines were placed at the very center of the slope, a faint reading appeared. It was weak, but it pulsed like a heartbeat hidden deep within the mountain. The explorers looked around. The slope stretched upward, framed by barren earth and stones that had seen countless winters. Shadows played tricks here. One of the men stood to the side and said the road looked downhill from his angle. Another insisted it was uphill. They argued, but the land refused to agree with either of them. Their eyes betrayed them. The shadows moved strangely, bending where no bend should exist, curving in ways that made the ground seem alive. At night, the team gathered in their tents. Their journals filled with careful words at first, lines drawn straight, thoughts measured. But as the days passed, the writing grew frantic. The ink pressed harder into the pages, the letters more uneven. They wrote of strange sounds carried by the wind, like distant whispers that grew louder when they camped close to the slope. They rode the compasses spinning again, even when packed away. One man claimed he heard his watch ticking out of rhythm, faster than normal, then slower, as if time itself had lost its way near the hill. Another man wrote that he could not sleep. Whenever he closed his eyes, he felt the pull of the hill on his body, a pressure on his chest, a tugging at his thoughts. He dreamed of being lifted, of walking upward forever with no end. He woke drenched in sweat, his hands trembling. By the fourth night, his journal lines broke apart, words scattered, almost unreadable. The leader of the group tried to hold order. He demanded discipline, demanded that science explain what they saw. But even he began to write in ways that betrayed his calm face. He confessed that the slope made him uneasy, that his instruments seemed to mock him. Readings appeared where they should not exist. Magnetism in a land where no great deposits of iron lay. Interference where silence should rule. The mountain did not simply resist explanation. It laughed at it. As days turned into weeks, the explorers grew restless. Their faces pale, their voices lower. The hill changed the way they looked at the world. Some refused to step onto the slope anymore, claiming it made their heads ache, their vision blur. Others insisted on walking again and again, as though searching for an answer hidden in plain sight. The villagers who watched from afar shook their heads. They had warned them, but outsiders never listened. Stranger things began to happen. One morning, a man set his camera toward the hill. When the film developed, the image was blurred, as if the lens had shaken violently. Yet no one recalled movement. Another time, a device used to measure the Earth's pull recorded a sudden spike, as though for a single second gravity had shifted. The reading vanished before they could record it twice. The pages of their journals filled with desperate notes. Words like distortion, anomaly, uncharted. At night, the team's fire burned low. Their voices grew quieter. The wind outside the tent seemed to whisper, though none of them admitted to hearing the same words. One man scribbled that he heard a voice calling his name. Another wrote that he felt someone watching him from the dark. They checked their instruments again and again, but the machines gave no comfort. They ticked, spun, and faltered. They had no answers. One journal spoke of a night when the men sat in silence, staring at the hill under the moonlight. The slope glowed faintly, pale in the silver light. The road appeared endless. stretching into the stars. For a moment, none of them could agree where the hill began or ended. Some swore it looked as if the sky itself leaned down, blending with the ground. The words in the journal stopped there. A single line followed. It is not only the earth that bends here, it is the mind. Days later, their supplies ran low. The leader urged them to leave, though some wanted to stay, to keep pressing until answers revealed themselves. In the end, they packed their equipment and returned to the world below. But the men were not the same. Their journals told the truth their mouths could not. They left the village with pale faces, quiet eyes, and a silence that weighed heavier than their packs. In time, their journals passed into other hands. Scholars read them, their brows furrowed. Some dismissed the words as the ramblings of men overcome by isolation. Others lingered on the details, the spinning compasses, the strange shadows, the sudden magnetic pulses. They wondered if the hill was more than illusion, more than a trick of perspective. They wondered if the earth itself hid something beneath, something that disturbed not only machines, but the minds of those who dared measure it. Years passed, and more investigators came. Scientists with better tools, explorers with stronger wills. Yet the story was always the same. Instruments faltered, shadows deceived, journals grew frantic, and in the silence of the Himalayas, the hill remained unchanged. It pulled cars upward. It bent the eyes. It stirred the minds of men, but it gave no answers. The first investigators had opened the door. They had seen the mountain's strange hand at work. They had written their fear in ink, left it for the world to read. And though they left with their bodies intact, part of their minds remain on that slope. For once a man sees a place where gravity bends, where shadows lie, where instruments betray, he cannot return to the world as it was. The memory clings like frost on the soul. And so the hill stands, waiting for the next seekers, the next men of science who believe the world is theirs to measure. It waits, silent and patient, as it always has. Their compasses will spin. Their journals will tremble. Their minds will question. And still the mountain will hold its secret. Because some places are not meant to give answers. Some places are meant only to remind us that the world is not as we think. The first investigators learned that truth, and all who follow in their steps will learn it too. The strange road in the Himalayas had already drawn explorers, scientists, and wanderers who left with more questions than answers. Yet for every frantic journal and trembling hand, there were voices that tried to calm the storm. Skeptics rose, their words sharp and certain. They insisted the hill was nothing more than an illusion, a trick of perspective, born from the way the land tilted against the horizon, from the way shadows played with the eye. To them, it was not a curse, not a blessing, not even a puzzle. It was simple. It was ordinary. It was a game of sight, nothing more. At first, their reasoning seemed sound. Human eyes could be fooled. The horizon could mislead. The brain could make slopes appear where none existed. Many who listened wanted to believe them, wanted to hold the comfort of explanation. After all, it was easy to laugh at an illusion than to fear an invisible force tugging at the bones of the earth. But then came the heavy trucks. The drivers swore they cut their engines, only to watch in disbelief as their massive vehicles crawled uphill without a touch of fuel. The metal groaned, the wheels rolled, and tons of weight shifted against every rule of nature. Some said perhaps the trucks were on a downward slope that only appeared to rise. Yet the more people watched, the more the doubts grew. Was the human I so easily tricked? Could tons of steel and rubber be fooled just as the mind was fooled? The villagers who lived nearby did not laugh. They knew the whispers of old. They watched the trucks roll and shook their heads. To them, the illusion was only a mask, thin and fragile, covering something deeper. The kind of mask that hid more than it revealed. Some said the earth beneath the hill was not silent. They spoke of a humming sound that could be felt if one lay down with an ear to the ground. A low vibration, steady and endless, as though the mountain itself had a heartbeat. Even skeptics felt it when they listened closely. It was faint, but it was there, like the distant echo of a machine buried far below. Some dismissed it as a wind, some as a shifting of rocks deep in the earth. But others could not ignore the rhythm. Too steady, too alive to be chance. If the illusion was real, they wondered, what was it hiding? There were stories of boulders moving, stones as old as the mountain itself shifting against gravity. A shepherd once told of watching a great rock roll upward during a storm. The rain lashed down, the lightning split the sky, and there, in the silver light, the boulder climbed. He swore he saw it with his own eyes. The elders of the village nodded when he spoke, for they too had seen stones shift in silence, as though the earth beneath them stirred and refused to let them rest. Those who doubted grew uneasy. An illusion could not move stone. A trick of the eyes could not push metal. The more they tried to explain, the more their words faltered. And in that faltering, fear grew, because if it was not illusion, then it was force. A force buried deep, waiting, unseen but felt. Scientists returned, determined to prove once and for all that the hill was nothing more than deception. They set up levels, lasers, and lines. They measured angles and distances. Their machines agreed. The slope was downward, though it appeared upward. They declared the mystery solved. Yet, when they left their machines and simply watched, their eyes told a different story. The sight of a truck crawling uphill refused to be dismissed. The brain and the machine clashed, and in between them lay doubt. Some researchers admitted quietly that the instruments could not measure everything. There were forces the earth held that still defied full understanding. They spoke of magnetic fields that could bend light, of underground structures that could distort perception. They wondered if the hill was not simply a game of sight, but a place where something unseen bent both eye and earth alike. Nights in the valley grew uneasy. Travelers who camped near the hill wrote of strange dreams, dreams of walking upward forever into a sky that would not end. Others dreamed of humming that grew louder and louder until it filled every thought. Some woke shaken, their hands trembling, unable to explain why tears slid down their cheeks. The skeptics scoffed, but they did not sleep near the hill themselves. As the years passed, more and more began to whisper of what lay beneath. Was there something buried under the earth? Something ancient, something alive? Some believed it was a fragment of the heavens, a stone fallen from the stars that still pulsed with power. Others claimed it was no stone at all, but structure, a hidden chamber built long ago, sealed by those who knew what should not be freed. The villagers said the mountain was a mouth, and the hill was its tongue. It pulled upward, not a trick, but to taste. They said the earth was not swallowing gravity, but bending it, twisting it as easily as a man twists a rope. They feared that whatever caused the force had never truly slept. It hummed because it lived. It pulled because it wanted. Travelers grew fascinated, and soon tourists came, laughing as their cars rolled uphill. They treated it as wonder, as a trick to amuse. They filmed it, posted it, marveled at the strange sight, but behind their laughter lay unease. Some admitted later that they felt their hearts race, that the air seemed heavier, that the world did not feel quite right while standing on that road. For in their bones, they too felt the hum, even if they did not name it. The skeptics still spoke, their voices sharp. They declared again and again that it was illusion, nothing more. Yet their words grew quieter, less certain, for every year brought new stories. A truck too heavy to be fooled, a boulder that shifted in silence, a hum too steady to ignore. And the eyes of the villagers, watching always, whispering always, never once calling it illusion. The question lingered like mist in the valley. Was the hill a trick of the eyes, or was the illusion only a veil, drawn thin over a force the earth refused to reveal? Perhaps the mountain hid something far older than the roads, something that pulsed beneath the stone, a force buried, humming and waiting. No one could prove it, and no one could dismiss it. The hill remained silent and unbroken, pulling upward in defiance of the world. To the villagers, it was alive. To the travelers, it was mystery. To the skeptics, it was unease. And to the mountain, it was nothing at all. It simply was. Some forces need no explanation. They endure, they hum, they wait, and in the heart of the Himalayas, the hill waits still. Long before a single car rolled on the lonely Himalayan road, long before tourists stood laughing at the strange pull of the hill, the people of Ladakh already knew there was something otherworldly about this place. Their lives were hard in the thin mountain air, but their faith was strong, and their stories carried deeper truths than any instrument could measure. Among those stories, one legend stood above all others: the belief that the hill was not merely a slope of stone, but the pathway to heaven. The elders said the hill chose who would draw upward. To the worthy, the slope was a blessing. They would be pulled toward the heavens, guided by divine forces unseen. But to the sinful, the hill offered nothing. They would remain rooted to the earth, bound to their mortal burdens. It was said that when a man approached the hill, his soul was tested not by words, but by the silent judgment of the land itself. Some were lifted, others left behind, their weakness laid bare against the endless sky. Generations of villagers grew up with this belief. To them, the hill was not an accident of nature, but a gate. Children were told to walk with clean hearts, for the earth itself listened. Travelers were warned that the slope could feel their intent, weighing their worth as easily as men weigh stones. There were stories of pilgrims climbing the road, only to feel their feet grow light, their bodies lifted as though carried by unseen hands. Some swore these men vanished into the horizon, their figures fading like smoke into the heavens above. The monasteries that dotted the mountains held carvings and scrolls that spoke of this place. Worn stone walls carried images of men standing on slopes with arms raised, their faces lifted toward the sky. Above them, the carvings showed battles in the heavens, lines of fire streaking through the air, figures locked in combat among the clouds. The monks explained that the hill had always been connected to the wars of the gods. It was not simply a place on earth, but a scar left behind by powers too great for mortals to name. There are tales of falling stars, burning bright against the night, crashing into mountains with thunder so loud the valleys shook. The people of Ladakh believed those stars were not ordinary rocks, but fragments of divine weapons, hurled across the sky in battles far above human sight. Where those stars fell, the land grew strange. Rivers bent their courses, shadows changed their shapes, and hills pulled men upward when they should have pulled them down. The magnetic hill was one such place, not the work of men, not even the earth, but a mark left by war in the heavens. The old monk spoke of objects sealed within the mountain, objects of great power that no man should disturb. Some said they were fragments of the fallen stars themselves, still burning with the energy of creation. Others whispered they were relics of gods, locked away to prevent mortals from misusing them. Whatever the truth, the people of Ladakh treated the hill with respect. They bowed before it. They whispered prayers near it. And they never stayed too long, fearing to draw the attention of what slept beneath the stone. One legend tells of a king who came to the valley centuries ago, proud and ambitious. He heard of the hill and believed that if it truly held a pathway to heaven, he could climb it and claim immortality. His soldiers followed him, their armor shining, their banners bright against the barren earth. But when they reached the slope, the men felt the pull. Their carts rolled upward, their horses stumbled, and their own bodies grew heavy with fear. The king alone pressed forward, laughing that he was chosen. But as he reached the crest, his laughter turned to screams. The chronicles say the earth opened beneath him, swallowing him whole. His soldiers fled, leaving behind their weapons, which the villagers later found scattered along the road. Another story speaks of a hermit who lived near the hill, a man who sought silence and truth. He believed the slope was a bridge between worlds, a place where the human spirit could leave behind its chains. For years, he meditated at its base, never asking for food, never speaking travelers. One winter, during a night of violent storms, the hermit vanished. His hut was found empty, his few belongings untouched. The villagers said the hill had finally accepted him, carrying him upward into the sky, far beyond the reach of mortal men. The ancient faiths of Ladakh tied the hill to their understanding of balance. They believed the world was not only soil and stone, but also energy, flowing like rivers beneath the ground. Some places held stronger energy than others. Sacred shrines were built where the flow was pure, while cursed grounds were avoided where the flow twisted. The magnetic hill was seen as both sacred to those who walked with clean hearts, cursed to those who carried darkness inside. Even the songs of the region carried echoes of the legend. Old chants spoke of mountains that breathed, of stars that fell, of roads that led not to towns but to eternity. These were not songs of entertainment, but songs of warning and remembrance. The hill was never forgotten, never dismissed. To the people of Ladakh, it was a reminder that heaven and earth were not as far apart as men like to think. As centuries passed, the stories grew deeper. Some monks began to write of battles not only in the sky, but beneath the earth. They said the mountain held not one sealed object, but many, each humming with its own power. These objects had to be buried, locked away so that men could not touch them. The slope of the hill, they believed, was shaped by these relics, pulling at the world even through stone and soil. The monks described them as eyes that never closed, watching the valley forever, waiting for the day they might awaken. Travelers from distant lands heard these stories and scoffed, but they could not deny what they saw with their own eyes. Their carts rolled uphill, their feet felt lighter, and their shadows bent strangely on the ground. They returned home with tales of a hill that judged the soul, a hill where heaven pulled the worthy upward. And so the legend spread far beyond Ladakh, carried by merchants, soldiers, and wandering monks. What made the stories powerful was not only their mystery, but their warning. Each tale carried the same truth, that the hill was never meant to be ordinary. It was not a road to be walked without care. It was a place of testing, a place where heaven and earth touched for reasons man could never fully know. Those who treated it as sacred found peace. Those who treated it with arrogance found ruin. Even today, when tourists film their cars rolling against gravity, the old monks shake their heads. To them, the hill is not a trick, not an amusement, but a living reminder of battles far older than man. They say the mountain still hums with the echoes of those wars, that the relics remain sealed deep within, and that the hill will always pull upward as a sign of the forces that shaped it. The ancient legends live on in whispers, in carvings, in chants. They are part of the land as much as the stones and the snow. They remind all who hear them that the hill is more than an illusion, more than a scientific puzzle. It is a scar of the heavens, a doorway between worlds, a place where the worthy may rise and the unworthy remain. And so the pathway to heaven endures, silent and mysterious, pulling upward against the weight of the world, carry with it the memory of battles, the promise of judgment, and the shadow of forces no man has ever fully understood. The road that defies gravity has always been a place of wonder. People come to laugh, to test their cars, to feel the strange pull for themselves. But beneath the wonder runs something darker. For as long as the villagers can remember, there have been stories of travelers who set out along that road and never returned. Their names faded into silence, their journeys unfinished. The mountains seemed to take them, as though the road itself demanded payment for its secrets. One of the earliest tales told in hushed voices is a military convoy that passed through the valley many years ago. A line of trucks carrying supplies made their way toward the high passes, their engines roaring, their headlights cutting the night. The soldiers joked as they drove, unaware of the shadow that stretched over them. Hours later, they were expected at the next post, but they never arrived. Days passed, and search parties scoured the road. Only fragments were found, an empty crate, a torn piece of canvas, the mark of tires that stopped halfway up the hill. The rest was gone. Not a single man, not a single truck was ever seen again. The villagers whispered that the convoy had been swallowed. Some said the earth itself opened and took them into the mountain. Others believed the hill judged them unworthy and claimed them as sacrifice. Families waited for word, but none came. To this day, the missing convoy remains a wound in the memory of the valley. Other disappearances followed. Travelers who walked the road at night, their lamps glowing faintly in the dark, were seen heading upward but never reached the villages beyond. Their footprints sometimes ended halfway, as if they had simply stopped walking. Horses tied to carts were later found grazing calmly by the roadside, but their masters were nowhere to be seen. Children were warned never to stray too close, never to linger when the sun fell, for the road was hungry at night. One chilling tale speaks of a merchant caravan, moving slowly with its mules and wagons. Villagers recall watching their lanterns bob along the path as dusk turned to night. Yet when dawn came, nothing remained. The wagons, the animals, the men, all vanished. Only the faint echo of wheels on stone was heard in the distance, a sound that faded slowly until silence took its place. What frightened people most were the lights. Many swore they saw headlights climbing the slope long after midnight, bright and steady, like cars pressing forward against the pull of the mountain. Yet, when they went closer, there was nothing. No engines, no voices, no cars, just light, hovering on the slope until it faded into the black of the night. Some believe these were the spirits of those who vanished, replaying their final journeys forever. Others thought the mountain mocked the living, showing illusions to remind them of what it had taken. There were also tales of strange noises in the dark. A driver once stopped his truck near the hill, unable to continue in the fog. He claimed he heard footsteps circling his vehicle, slow and heavy, but when he looked, there was no one. Another spoke of whispers rising from the ground, voices calling names he did not know, voices that grew louder as he stepped closer to the slope. He ran, never daring to drive that road again. The villagers did not doubt such stories. They said the mountain takes what it needs. It chooses its victims without reason, without mercy. Some say it hungers for souls, feeding on those who pass at the wrong time. Others say it guards something buried deep within, something that must never be uncovered. And so it removes those who stray too close. Whatever the reason, they warn travelers not to drive the road at night, not to test a hill when the stars are high, for darkness belongs to the mountain. There is a story of two friends who ignored such warnings. Young men, curious and bold. They drove their motorcycle toward the hill after sunset, laughing at the tales of ghosts and vanishings. Their families expected them home by morning, but the morning came without them. Searchers found the motorcycle lying near the slope, its fuel tank full, its tires intact. But the men were gone. Their voices were never heard again. In the village, mothers shook their heads and said the road had claimed them, just as it had claimed many before. Some disappearances were quieter, less dramatic, but no less haunting. A lone traveler heading toward Leh, carrying only a pack, was last seen near the base of the hill. He waved to villagers as he passed, promising to return with goods. Weeks later, his family came searching, but there was no trace. Not a shoe, not a scrap of cloth, not even footprints. The road had erased him, leaving only questions in its wake. What makes these disappearances more unsettling is the way they linger in the air of the valley. Locals say when the wind is strong, you can still hear faint echoes on the road. Boots striking stone, wheels creaking, engines rumbling in the dark. Yet when you turn, nothing is there. The sounds drift, vanish, and leave only silence. Some call them ghosts, others call them memories. But all agree they are reminders that the road does not forget what it has taken. The monks in the nearby monasteries offer their own view. They speak of balance, of forces unseen. They believe the road is not cruel, but protective. They say those who vanish are not lost, but taken into another realm, shielded from some greater danger. In their chants, they call the hill a guardian, a place where spirits linger to protect the sacred mountains. Yet even they warn against testing its patience, for no mortal can choose when the road will open or close. For outsiders, the stories are chilling, but many still come, drawn by curiosity. They roll their cars uphill, they laugh at the strange trick, and they leave believing they have conquered the mystery. But the villagers know better. They know that for every tourist who drives away unharmed, there are names that never left the valley, names that the mountain holds in silence. And so the road continues to draw men and take them. No sign, no pattern, only the quiet pull of forces unseen. Some say the disappearances are chance, accidents of the wild, men lost to storms or bandits or the harsh mountain night. Others believe too strongly in what they have seen to accept such simple answers. They saw headlights where no cars should be. They heard footsteps where no men stood. They felt the weight of a force too old to name. The magnetic hill of Ladakh remains both wonder and terror, a road where cars climb uphill, where science falters, and where men vanish as if plucked from the earth. The stories of the missing convoy, the lost travelers, the vanished friends, they are not forgotten. They are whispered in the evenings, told to children as warnings, carried in prayers by the monks. And still the headlights are seen. Still the road hums with silence. Still the mountain takes what it needs. In the 1970s, when the world was racing into new frontiers of science and discovery, There was a man who turned his eyes away from cities and machines and instead fixed them on a lonely stretch of road in the Himalayas. He was a physicist, quiet but relentless, a man known among his colleagues for chasing questions no one else dared to ask. While others dismissed a magnetic hill as a mere trick of the eyes, he saw in it something far more. To him, it was not illusion, it was anomaly, a magnetic anomaly unlike anything else on Earth. He arrived in Ladakh with notebooks, measuring devices, and a determination that unsettled even the villagers, where others stayed for a day or two, testing their cars and leaving with laughter. He remained. He walked the slope again and again, pacing like a man searching for hidden doors. He pressed his ear to the ground, feeling for vibrations. He drew lines in the dust, comparing shadows hour by hour. Each night, he returned to a small room in the village, where a lamp burned late into the hours, and his pen scratched tirelessly against paper. The villagers grew used to his presence, but not his obsession. They watched him wander under the hot sun, crouching by the roadside, holding instruments that spun and ticked. Some said they heard him mutter to himself, repeating measurements, shaking his head when the numbers made no sense. He was polite when spoken to, but his eyes were elsewhere, always on the hill, as though it called to him. Letters began to leave the village, carried by the postman who rode on long routes through the valleys. His colleagues far away received them, pages thick with data, sketches of angles and curves, notes about magnetic interference where there should be none. He wrote of compasses that spun wildly, of readings that appeared in bursts and then vanished. He described metallic structures underground, unnatural in shape, detected by crude instruments that hinted at something vast below the stone. In one letter he wrote, "This is no illusion. There is design here. Something was built beneath us." His words troubled some and fascinated others. A few scientists dismissed him, calling his findings errors of equipment, but others whispered that he might be on the edge of discovery. Was there a hidden mass of iron in the mountain? Was it a meteorite, buried deep and still humming with the energy of the stars? Or was it, as he hinted, something constructed, something unnatural? The villagers noticed his health change. His face grew thinner, his eyes darker. He slept little, ate less, and spent long hours near the hill in silence. Sometimes he stood with his arms spread wide, as though testing the pull with his body. Children who watched from afar said he swayed, not backward or forward, but inward, as if his chest leaned toward the earth itself. When asked why he lingered so long, he only replied, "It's not what you see, it's what lies beneath." His notebooks grew stranger with time. At first, they were filled with clean rows of numbers, neat drawings of slopes, diagrams of force. But later pages carried frantic handwriting, letters pressed deep into the paper, words written over one another. He wrote of humming in the ground, of shadows that stretched in wrong directions, of nights where he felt the pull even in his sleep. "It is not pulling us up," he scrawled. "It is pulling us in." Then, one evening, he disappeared. The villagers noticed his room was dark, his lamp unlit. His journals lay scattered on the table, the ink on the last page still fresh. His bed was untouched, his bag still packed. There was no sign of struggle, no footprint leading away, only silence. Some thought he had wandered onto the hill and lost his way. Others believed he had been claimed by the very force he studied. Searchers combed the valley, but no trace was found. Weeks turned into months. His name faded from official records, his letters gathering dust in offices where no one wanted to admit what they had read. But in the village, his story became legend. The man who stared too long at the hill, the man who listened too closely to its hum, the man who vanished without a sound. His last notebook remained. Its pages told the descent of a mind into obsession, from clear logic to words written in haste and fear. One page described the shape of something beneath the ground, curved, metallic, vast. Another spoke of forces that bent not only gravity, but time itself. The final line was short, written in letters that seemed to dig into the paper. "It's not pulling us up, it's pulling us in." Those words still haunt the valley. Monks in the monastery shake their heads when asked about him, saying that knowledge without balance is dangerous. They whisper that he discovered what the hill truly guarded, and the mountains silence him before he could reveal too much. Villagers say his spirit lingers there, pacing the slope endlessly, still measuring, still searching, his eyes locked on something no one else can see. For years afterward, travelers claim to see a lone figure standing on the hill at dusk, tall and thin, holding something in his hands. When they drew closer, the figure was gone, leaving only the empty road and the hum of the wind. Some swore they heard the scratch of a pen in the night, as if a hand unseen still wrote in a notebook under the stars. The scientist became part of the whispers, his story bound to the hill as tightly as the legends of heaven and judgment. Some call him a fool, undone by obsession. Others called him a pioneer, a man who dared to seek answers where others feared. But all agreed on one truth. He vanished, swallowed by the silence of mountain, leaving behind words that only deepen the mystery. The magnetic hill remains, unchanged. Cars still roll upward. Travelers still laugh and marvel. Skeptics still point to illusions. Yet the words of the scientists linger. It's not pulling us up. It's pulling us in. And for those who hear them, the laughter fades, replaced by unease. Because if he was right, then the hill is not a trick of the eyes, not even a puzzle of magnetism. It is a force, ancient and alive, pulling not outward, but inward, drawing everything closer to something hidden, something sealed, something waiting. And so his story endures, not only in journals and letters, but in the breath of the wind, in the hum beneath the ground, in the eyes of those who stand too long on that impossible road. The man is gone, but the hill remains. And whatever pulled him in, whatever silenced his voice, waits still in the heart of the mountain. There was once a man who could not let go of mysteries. He was not a tourist looking for amusement, nor a scholar bound theories on paper. He was an investigator, a seeker of patterns hidden beneath layers of silence. The story of the magnetic hill, with its vanished convoys, restless lights, and the scientists who disappeared without trace, had gnawed at him for years. While others turned their eyes away, he gathered every rumor, every faded report, every whispered word from those who dared speak. And so he began his journey to retrace the steps of the lost. He started with the fragments, old photographs from the 1950s, their edges yellowed, showing convoys frozen in grainy frames. Soldiers standing beside trucks, their faces proud, unaware of what awaited them. In one photograph, taken near the slope, the horizon itself looked bent, as though the land tilted unnaturally behind the men. The investigator studied it for hours, turning the image in his hands until he could no longer tell where the earth ended and the sky began. Then came the broken compasses. He found them in collections, tucked away in boxes by families who had lost men to the hill. Their glass was cracked, their needles twisted at odd angles, frozen in directions that made no sense. He held them gently, as though the weight of the object carried the weight of the vanished. He wondered if the compasses were not broken by accident, but by force, a force too strong for fragile instruments to bear. He collected journals too, their pages brittle with age. Explorers who had written in tidy lines at first, only for their words to descend into chaos. It hums beneath us. Shadows do not fall right. The pull is inside me. He underlined these passages again and again, his pen scratching deep into the margins. To him, these were not ramblings. They were warnings. The deeper he searched, the stranger the pieces became. One evening, in a dusty archive, he found a file with no title, its papers stamped with heavy ink. Many pages were missing, ripped out long ago, but a phrase repeated in the fragments that remained, Project Himalaya. His heart quickened. It was no longer legend, no longer only whispers. Governments had known. Someone had studied the hill not for curiosity, but for control. The file spoke of experiments in the 1960s, when teams of scientists were sent with equipment more advanced than compasses and notebooks. Their goal was not to dismiss the hill as illusion, but to measure its force. The results were staggering. Readings of magnetic fields so powerful they could bend light itself. Instruments designed to track gravity faltered, producing numbers that defied natural law. One line chilled him most. Localized distortions detected, visual perception unreliable within radius. But the strangest part was not the readings. It was the silence that followed. Every file after a certain date was sealed, every report locked away. The investigator traced the names of men who had worked on the project. Many were missing from records after 1973. Others had resigned abruptly, their letters short, their reasons vague, unfit for further study. Health deteriorated. Recommendation. Termination of inquiry. He began to see a pattern. The scientist who vanished in the 1970s had not been alone. He had been part of something larger, something hidden. The obsession that consumed him was not only his own. It was shared by others, men who had glimpsed truths too dangerous to be spoken aloud. As the investigator pieced together these fragments, he returned again and again to the hill itself. He stood on the slope at dusk, when the wind carried the last warmth of the sun away, and he felt the weight of silence press against him. His eyes told him one thing, his body another. He placed a marble on the ground and watched it roll upward. He pressed his palm against the soil and swore. He felt a faint vibration beneath, not random, rhythmic, as if something beneath the mountain pulsed, slow and steady, like a slumbering heart. At night, he dreamed of the vanished physicist. He saw him standing at the road's crest, notebook in hand, his face pale in the moonlight. He heard his final words echo again and again. It's not pulling us up, it's pulling us in. He would wake with sweat on his brow, his chest tight, as though the hill had reached into his sleep. The whispers of the villagers began to make sense in ways that chilled him. They spoke of the mountain taking what it needed, of lights climbing the slope with no vehicles attached, of voices calling out long after midnight. He no longer dismissed them as superstition. He recorded each tale with precision, adding it to his growing puzzle. For in every whisper, in every vanishing, he sensed the same hidden truth. Back in his study, the documents of Project Himalayas spread before him. He noticed one final note scrawled in the margins of a report. The ink was faded. The handwriting rushed. It read, "Containment unstable, not gravitational. Recommend sealing perimeter." His breath caught as he read the words again. Not gravitational. If not gravity, then what? He wondered if the hill was never meant to be a road at all. Perhaps it was a scar of something buried, an entrance concealed beneath layers of stone and soil. If metallic structures truly lay hidden, who had built them? Were they remnants of battles in the sky, as the monks' carvings claimed? Or were they something else, something far older than any god or man? His work began to consume him, just as it had consumed the physicist decades earlier. Friends noticed his absence. Letters from him grew shorter, stranger. The hill is a veil. Light bends here. They covered it because they fear it. Yet he pressed on, driven not by fear, but by the need to know. Each night, surrounded by faded photographs and broken instruments, he traced lines across maps, circling the hill again and again. He marked points where disappearances occurred, where strange readings were recorded. Slowly, he began to see a shape emerge, a pattern too precise to be chance. The hill was not isolated. It was part of something larger, something stretching beneath the mountains like veins of an unseen body. The files of Project Himalaya ended abruptly, their pages blacked out, their details erased. But the silence of governments could not silence the hum of the earth. The investigator knew that if the readings were true, if light itself could bend on that slope, then the hill was not only a curiosity, it was a doorway, or perhaps a warning. And so he returned to the slope one last time, journal in hand, his steps steady though his heart raced. He stood where cars rolled upward, where shadows bent, where compasses spun. He closed his eyes and listened. Beneath the silence of the night, beneath the whistle of the wind, he heard it again. The hum, low, endless, patient. In that sound, he felt the truth that no document could capture. The hill was not pulling upward or downward. It was drawing inward, folding the world into itself, swallowing light, sound, and memory. That was why men vanished. That was why files were sealed. That was why the mountain still waited, unchanged, decade after decade. The investigator returned with his notes, his photographs, his broken compasses, but he did not share them widely. He knew what had happened to the physicist, to the soldiers, to those who stared too deeply. Some mysteries protect themselves by erasing those who come too close. He wrote his findings carefully, as though choosing words that might slip past the silence of the hill. And yet, when his work was done, he left one page marked with a sentence written slowly, as though to anyone who might find it later. The hill bends more than the eye. It bends the world itself. To this day, his journals remain hidden among the whispers, scattered across forgotten shelves and dusty archives. But those who seek them, those who retrace his steps, feel the same chill, because the hill is still there, rolling cars upward, drawing shadows inward, humming beneath the ground. And all the sealed files, all the vanished men, all the broken compasses tell the same story. The mountain is more than stone. It is alive, and it has never stopped pulling. The investigator had gathered photographs, journals, compasses, and sealed reports, but the more pieces he held in his hands, the less comfort they gave him. Each detail only deepened the unease, until one chilling idea began to form in his mind. What if the magnetic hill was not a miracle of nature, not a playful trick of perspective, not even a random anomaly of physics, but something far darker? What if the hill was never meant to pull at cars or confuse the eye? What if the hill itself was a seal, a scar covering something buried, something that should never have been touched? The thought did not arrive all at once. It grew slowly, like a shadow stretching across the ground at dusk. At first, it came from amongst carvings that showed battles in the sky, stars falling and objects sealed within the mountains. Then from the villagers' whispers about the mountain taking what it needed. Then from the scientist's last words, "It's not pulling us up, it's pulling us in." And finally, from the sealed pages of Project Himalaya, where someone had written, "Containment unstable, put together." The pattern was impossible to ignore. If the hill was a seal, then the pull upward was no miracle. It was not defiance of gravity at all. It was a warning, a side effect of something trapped beneath. The road was not magical. It was wounded. The land itself bent because something beneath it bent the laws of the world. He thought of the disappearances, the soldiers who never reached their posts, the travelers who walked into silence, the scientists who vanished with ink still wet in his journal. What if they had not been swallowed by accident, but consumed by design? What if the force beneath the hill was never asleep, only waiting, taking lives as reminders of its presence? The idea of sacrifice began to haunt him. The villagers often said the mountain chooses. The monk spoke of balance. What if these were not metaphors? What if long ago, when the anomaly first appeared, people offered sacrifices to keep it still? What if the stories of the hill pulling the worthy upward were not blessings, but warnings in disguise? Descriptions of men taken as offerings to keep what was buried from rising again. He returned to the old monasteries and studied their fading murals. On one wall, a figure stood with hands raised, light falling upon him as he was lifted into the sky. Most had always believed it was an image of a soul ascending to heaven, but the investigator saw it differently. The man was not rising by choice. He was being pulled, his body bent, his face twisted, his limbs spread as though dragged by invisible chains. Was this not depiction of salvation, but a sacrifice? In another carving, he saw stars raining from the sky, burning the earth. Below, monks knelt, building a great mound of stone, sealing something within it. Their faces were solemn, their eyes wide. The mural ended with a single line of script, worn but still legible. Translated, it read, "Bury it deep, seal it with earth, pray it sleeps." The investigator's heart pounded as he traced the letters. Could it be that the hill was built, shaped deliberately, to hide something from the world? A chamber, a tomb, a prison buried beneath? His mind returned to the readings of Project Himalaya. Distortions in light, fields of force that bent shadows, instruments recording pulses like a heartbeat. If something had been buried, it was no stone, no meteorite. It was alive in some way. Not alive as flesh is alive, but alive as fire is alive, alive as storms are alive. It moved not in body, but in force, bending the very fabric of nature around it. The more he thought, the more the hill seemed less like an accident and more like a scar. A wound sealed over, holding back what should never be free. The upward pull was not a gift. It was leakage, a faint tremor of the power beneath, seeping through cracks in seal, enough to tilt compasses, to move cars, to lure men inward, enough to remind the world that it still existed. And if it was leaking, was the seal failing? That question tore at him. He studied old reports of disappearances and noticed something disturbing. They were not spread evenly through history. They seemed to come in waves, clusters of vanishings every few decades, as though the force beneath stirred restlessly from time to time, taking more when its hunger grew. Could this mean the seal weakened in cycles? Could there come a time when it would no longer hold? He imagined what would happen if it broke fully, if the power beneath surged outward, bending light, gravity, and time across the valley. Cars rolling uphill would be nothing compared to that. Entire rivers could flow backward. Shadows could fall upward into the sky. People could be torn from the earth and swallowed without warning. The valley would not remain a place of whispers. It would become a place of terror. And yet, the villagers lived there still. They herded their animals, tended their fields, lit their lamps at night. But they also whispered. They prayed. They told their children to stay away from the hill at night. Perhaps they had always known, in ways science never admitted, that the hill was a prison, a gate, a scar, and that their prayers were not for blessing, but for protection. The investigator began to write his theory. Though his hand trembled as he wrote, he described the hill not as a road, but as a seal. He spoke of structures beneath, metallic and vast, not natural, but shaped by something with purpose. He wrote of the sacrifices, men taken as offerings, disappearances that were not random, but demanded. He wrote that the upward pull was not miracle, not illusion, but warning. His final words on the page were simple. We call it a hill, but it is not land. It is lock. The thought chilled him, for if it was a lock, then what had it been built to hold? And who had built it? Were they monks? Were they men of long-lost civilizations? Or were they not men at all? Perhaps the very beings who battle in the skies left it sealed here, hidden in the mountains, hoping it would never be disturbed. He closed his eyes and felt again the hum in the ground, the vibration like a heart that never stopped beating. If the hill was a lock, then the hum was not sound but breath. The thing beneath was still alive, still present, still waiting. And the greatest question of all was not what it was, but how long the seal would last. Because every lock has a breaking point, every scar can split, and every prison can fail. For the investigator, the truth was no longer about illusion or science. It was about survival. The magnetic hill was never meant to amuse tourists or puzzle scientists. It was meant to remind humanity of the cost of meddling with forces beyond their grasp. It was not pulling cars uphill to entertain. It was leaking force, spilling its warning into the world, saying again and again, do not open, do not forget, do not wake what sleeps. And so the hill remains quiet, patient, pulling cars uphill, confusing the eyes, making skeptics laugh and villagers whisper. But beneath the laughter, beneath the whispers, beneath the stone itself lies a deeper truth. The upward pull is not miracle. It is not illusion. It is warning. The magnetic hill is a scar across the earth, a lock upon something buried, something humming, something waiting. And the silence of the mountains may not last forever. High in the cold winds of the Himalayas, the road still lies waiting. Every day, travelers approach it with wide eyes and playful curiosity. Cars are turned off, gears left in neutral, and yet the vehicles roll upward against the slope. Tourists laugh, pointing their cameras, recording the strange sight to share with the world. To them, it is entertainment, a quick moment of wonder on a journey through the mountains. They capture it, smile, and drive away. But the land does not laugh with them. The mountain remains silent, its face unchanged, its heart still humming below. Those who live in the valley see more than amusement. They see the old pattern continue, as it always has. Visitors come and go, leaving with souvenirs and stories, but never with answers. They marvel at the sight, unaware of the whispers that still echo in the wind. They do not hear the voices that speak of vanished convoys, of footsteps that end in silence, of headlights climbing the slope long after midnight when no car is there. They do not know that the hill has always been more than a trick. Even now, compasses twitch when placed on the slope. Needles spin or freeze, refusing to point north. Instruments meant to measure the pull of the earth falter, their numbers sliding into nonsense. Scientists return again and again, insisting on illusion, yet leaving with doubt written in their eyes. Machines capture readings they cannot explain, pulses and distortions that slip away before they can be measured twice. Still, the world calls it curiosity, something simple to be solved. The mountain waits, patient and unmoved. The old legends live on, even if they are ignored. In the monasteries nearby, faded carvings still show battles among the stars, and monks still chant prayers over the hill. In the evenings, elders in the village still speak of the pathway to heaven, where the worthy are drawn upward while the unworthy are left behind. Some still believe it is a place of judgment, others that it is a prison, a seal holding something that must not be freed. Whatever their belief, they treat it with respect. They do not stay near it at night. They do not mock its silence. They know too well the stories of those who vanished. And yet, the world forgets quickly. Tourists laugh, cameras flash, and videos spread, showing cars rolling upward with music and smiles. Few pause to ask why. Few notice the weight of the wind on their skin, or the way shadows bend strangely on the road. Few wonder why the hill never loses its pull. Year after year, generation after generation, the investigators' notes remain hidden, scattered across shelves where only the curious may find them. The physicist's last line still chills those who dare to read it. It's not pulling us up, it's pulling us in. The files of Project Himalaya remain sealed, locked away in archives that few will ever touch. But none of these silences erase the truth felt in the valley. The magnetic hill is alive with something that has never left. The earth hums faintly beneath it. Travelers who press their ears to the ground swear they feel it. A steady beat, patient and endless. Some call it imagination. Others call it wind through the stone. Yet those who have listened closely walk away changed, unsettled by what they felt, because it was not random. It was rhythm, as though something beneath the soil still breathes. Children in the villages are still warned not to wander there after dark. Mothers whisper that the mountain chooses. Fathers tell stories of the men who never came home. And at night, when the valley grows quiet and the stars burn bright, some say the hill glows faintly in the moonlight, as though lit from within. The road is never empty of questions. Is it an illusion, a simple trick of the eyes? Or is it something more, something that bends light, twists gravity, and plays with the minds of those who pass? Is the upward pull of curiosity for tourists, or is it a warning written into the earth itself? A scar of something buried, sealed long ago, still pushing against its cage? The silence of the mountains holds no answers. The magnetic hill stands as it always has, unchanged, eternal, pulling cars upward and pulling minds inward. For those who come with laughter, it is a marvel. For those who come with silence, it is a weight they never forget. And for those who listen too closely, it is a question that never stops echoing. What is buried beneath? Perhaps humanity will never know. Perhaps the hill was meant to confuse, to distract, to keep the truth hidden. Or perhaps one day the seal will break, and the force beneath will rise again, bending the world as it did long ago. Until then, the magnetic hill waits, pulling at stone, at steel, at shadow, at memory. The journey is unfinished, because the story is not over. The road remains, the hum continues, the whispers grow, and the question lingers. Illusion or force, miracle or prison, no one can say for certain. But those who walk the slope, who feel the strange pull in their bones, carry the memory forever. And now, the story rests with you. What do you believe? Is the magnetic hill a trick of the eye, or a scar of something sealed deep within the earth? Could the upward roll of a car be no more than amusement? Or is it the first sign of something waiting to awaken? Share your thoughts, because legends survive when they're spoken. Pass this story forward, because mysteries live when people remember them. If you found this journey through the magnetic hill as haunting as the whispers of the mountains themselves, then let others walk this road with us. Like this story, share it with those who love mysteries, and subscribe to hear more tales that question the world we think we know. The road is still there. The cars still roll uphill. The villagers still whisper. And the mountains still wait, holding secrets older than time. The journey may be unfinished, but the mystery continues.